If the world of finance wasn't worrying enough already, in the middle of the mayhem up pops a rogue trader who kneecaps the giant Swiss investment bank, UBS, to the tune of $2.2 billion and adds another layer of uncertainty onto Europe's tottering financial houses. So just how can things get so out of hand? And are the banks doing enough to manage the risk? Neil Woolrich reports.
It's the walk of shame for a select few who've blown billions of dollars and brought financial giants to their knees. London-based Quaker Adeboli is the latest to join the rogue traders' hall of infamy, accused of losing $2.2 billion while working on UBS's exchange-traded funds desk.
For large items such as this, a $2 billion loss, yes, that is preventable. It's up to the individual organisation, and the buck stops with board and with management.
It is basically the governance failure, the failure of the risk management practices within an organisation. And importantly, it is also to do with the incentives that are offered to the traders, especially the bonuses.
Personally, I think we have a situation where we give some young people who are highly motivated control over a large amount of money and say to them, go and make money for us, and the more you make, the more we'll reward you, and that provides a set of incentives where some people may fall into the trap of doing unauthorised activities.
While Quaker Adeboli is accused of racking up some eye-popping losses, he's still far from the world's worst rogue trader. That dubious distinction rests with Frenchman Jérôme Caville, who was convicted last year after losing $7 billion while working at Société Générale. By contrast, the man who broke the centuries-old Barings Bank, Nick Leeson, lost £800 million in the early 90s.
One of the lessons that comes out of this is that the over-reliance on technology needs to be reduced, and we need to go back to the old age of at least manually cross-checking some of these things. And this came out very distinctly in the Société Générale scandal in France, that manual checking was almost absent.
It seems to me to say that the instruments are complex and that the current workforce is perhaps not, or too specialised, is really a cop-out.
Australia's own rogue trading scandal was modest by comparison. In 2004, 4 foreign currency dealers lost the National Australia Bank $360 million.
I would suggest that custodial stay is very unlikely. You'd probably get a few thousand hours of community service, so you'd be spend the next 20 years paying and scout halls and stuff. But without back of that, cook food, go a bit of sun.
That assessment was as misguided as the group's trading strategies, and all 4 of the NAB's rogue traders were eventually sentenced to jail terms. It also cost the NAB's chairman and CEO their jobs and led to a bitter board spill. And while it inflicted long-lasting share price damage, it never came close to breaking the bank.
In the context of overall returns for shareholders or depositor safety, it's not a big issue. The bigger issue is the one of reputation for the bank, that if they're seen not to have good controls, then one starts to ask the questions about what exactly is happening in terms of their various trading strategies and investment strategies.
And it's not just banks that are vulnerable. Back in 1986, Andrew Covell was blamed for bringing down the electronics maker AWA after the foreign exchange gains he'd supposedly made turned out to be $50 million in losses.
Foreign exchange is the sort of game, if you like, that if you're away from it and not keeping an eye on it, it can be suicidal.
It's not systems and processes that go rogue or go bad, it's people.
Bruce Aughty is a former Chief Risk Officer for the Bank of Queensland and is now a principal with the consulting firm The Risk Board. He says a common theme in the UBS, Barings and Société Générale scandals was that each individual had moved from the back office to a trading position.
They knew what the processes, controls and the weaknesses in those controls were. So it was a failure of management to put in place really appropriate controls, and a failure of risk management in an overall sense.
One sort of wonders to what extent the big events are the tip of an iceberg, or whether there really is, there's not much happening except these occasional ones where someone happens to have found a way around the systems.
That may make nervous investors and depositors even more skittish, but Professor Kevin Davis says the best an institution can do is put in place systems which flag problems quickly.
There's probably a whole lot of other situations or other instances of traders taking unauthorised positions but being found out fairly quickly, positions being closed out and never actually coming into the public eye.
Most observers agree it's up to the individual institutions to get their own houses in order and for the board and executives to put in place the right risk management framework. Milan Sathi argues it's also important for auditors and regulators to be more sceptical about financial institutions.
At the moment, the way the things are happening is whatever the bank says, the auditor accepts, and so does the regulator accept. And ultimately, their reasoning is it is too complicated for us to understand.
The European Union is now considering a tax on financial transactions, which some argue may also help reduce the risk of unauthorised trading. But that may be wishful thinking. Rogue trading has been happening for centuries and likely to continue frightening banks and their stakeholders from time to time, no matter what safeguards are put in place.